Welcome back to another episode of the BW View. I am here with our Executive Director, Marilyn Stemper. Marilyn, thank you for joining today.
Thank you, Drew.
Great. So we'll jump into our first question here. Getting to know you a little bit more, Marilyn, how your journey brought you to apprenticeships and BuildWithin.
Oh, that's such a great question. And it's been an interesting journey. If I think back way back when I was young, I actually was a type of apprentice in my dad's manufacturing company. I remember coming in my early years, being on the line, bottling, capping, but also being in the office, right? Making sales calls, handling logistics. So it's a long route, but throughout my career, I came through the consulting route. I was a partner both at PricewaterhouseCoopers and at EY. I was at IBM for a number of years, and I've focused with a lot of HR functions and chief human resource executives to do transformation and system implementation work. So as I think about my journey and I think about things that are changing in HR, it was really evident to me that we had a shift and we need, from an HR perspective, to think about skills-based, right? There's a lot of reasons why, and we can talk about that, I'm sure we will. But just the ability to help that transition and that transformation was important to me. And it's also a great way, apprenticeships are a great way to help communities that are underserved to really improve and escalate. And so the package of all of that with what BuildWithin was doing was really attractive to me. So that's how I got here.
That's great. Thanks for the background there. And Marilyn, part of your job and a lot of work that you do behind the scenes is engaging with employers. So say a few words on kind of what conditions currently exist to make apprenticeships a smart option for an employer.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And we mentioned skills-based. And so if you think about what's happening in the marketplace, there's a big mismatch right now. So we have a lot of job openings and we have unemployed folks. And we're just not able to make good matches because skills are changing annually based on technology. We all know what's happened with ChatGPT, with AI. And the country as a whole is losing almost $2 trillion annually because we can't fill positions. People don't have the right skill sets. Our job requisitions are calling for four-year college degrees. Over 75% are that way. Only 40% of our folks have a degree. So it really forces employers to think of some new ways to bring talent in, and it forces them to think about training. In this country, from a professional apprenticeship perspective, about 0.2% of our jobs start with apprentices and apprenticeships. And if we look to Europe and the rest of the world, it's about 75%.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So for folks that are early career, for people who are changing careers, for people who don't have a four-year degree, this is an incredible route. And not only is it good for the employer as far as helping, putting people in roles that are required, but you really are able to bring somebody up to speed in the way your particular company operates. You can train specifically to your needs and your processes. And so it's a great retention strategy. You're making a great investment in folks and they're excited to stay with you. So those are just some of the reasons that this is here.
That's great. And you just mentioned, we were talking to a few folks, the country is losing trillions of dollars because they can't find enough folks to put into those roles. Right. Is that right?
Right. It's a loss of productivity here in this country. We have higher needs than what we can even fill, but we don't have the right skill sets. So I believe it's about 360,000 people who need to be trained every 2 years just to keep up with technology. And those are workers that are already in positions. So if you think about folks that haven't even started yet, right? It just escalates. So training is here.
That's great. And we have this phrase that we say so often, say yes to the apprentice and say yes to the apprenticeship. We have a number of employers who have said yes to the apprentice and apprenticeship so far. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what you found as the major benefit for the employer, and then some of their major sticking points as you're getting this started, trying to get it off the ground for them.
Yeah, that's great. Relative to benefits, there's so many, right? I just mentioned a couple, right? Retention, as an example, is one of the biggest outputs. We see a lot of churn, especially in certain industries and certain segments, right? If you're in retail, as an example, if you're in food and beverage. I was just with a company this morning that's a transportation company, drivers as an example. There's a lot of rotation. And so if you're really trying to shore up those roles and you have people stay with you a long time, this is one strategy that's really important. We talked about GDP, we talked about $2 trillion in lost productivity. It's an important element. Apprenticeships are important from a federal perspective. So there is incentive money. Employers are eligible for tax breaks for federal, state, and local incentives. So not only are you bringing in a great resource, you are also getting an incentive back for that. And I think that those two elements combined, those are probably the biggest benefits that I see for companies. There's so many more, but those are the top two. And relative to sticking points, people don't know what apprenticeships are. And it's really quite a simple model. An apprentice is a full-time hire, right? It's somebody you're bringing in, they work every single day. They have a manager just like everybody does. But they're learning on the job more so than, you know, a more experienced worker might.
Yep.
In addition to them being under a manager, they're gaining related technical instruction. It's called RTI. Some in California, it's RSI. Supplemental instruction, but it's about 144 hours annually in their first year. And those courses help them understand their job in a better way. So if you have a person who's, let's say, an accounting specialist, maybe we're teaching them 144 hours of different accounting coursework. What is a general ledger? What are accounts receivable and payables? How do you run transactions? How do you do trial balances? How do you close the books at the end of the month, and so forth? So that's really what an apprenticeship is. And I think employers don't always know that. I think that's probably the biggest hindrance.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at an event last night where, you know, a portion of this is education for employers and for the general public as well, because they hear about apprenticeships and a lot of folks are stuck in that kind of older thinking of it's only construction and trade jobs. When we have the opportunity to offer these apprenticeships in technology roles and so on, it's kind of the sky's the limit almost, it seems.
Yeah, it's sales and marketing and product development and IT across all of IT, not just developers, but cybersecurity and network specialists and so forth. It's across the board, as we said, human resources, accounting, wherever a company has a need. Apprenticeships make sense, especially if you have folks that are just coming into their career. Early career development is a main focus, especially for big companies, because you're training anyhow. So this makes sense. It provides a little bit, again, additional education for the person coming in. But this isn't just for early career. This is really suitable for somebody who's mid-career and maybe they're changing. Maybe you had somebody who was an accounting person in accounts receivable or whatever it happens to be, and they decided, I like sales, I want to make a change, but they don't want to go back and get a full 4-year credential. This is an incredible opportunity to make a shift and to do it with a company who's going to invest, and that person brings so many other skills to the table just because they're already an experienced worker. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. An opportunity for the apprentice to feel out the employer, and also the employer to feel out the apprentice before hopefully hiring them full time, which is great.
Well, the apprentice is full-time,
Yes.
but maybe it's before they move to the next step in the company, right? And you make a good point with what you said, because sometimes people who have done internships or even pre-apprenticeships are really perfect candidates to then move into an apprenticeship. At BuildWithin, a lot of the apprenticeships that we offer are competency-based. which means once a particular apprentice shows proficiency in their skill sets that have been laid out, they can move to the next level. And that doesn't have to be a year. That's based upon how quickly they're and how motivated they are to move through a program and to gain that proficiency. So it's really quite flexible. And just not to be too chatty, but 93% of apprentices move to the next level in their company. And after 5 years with a good program, 95% of those apprentices are still at the company. It's a huge retention rate.
That's a fascinating stat. Yeah, absolutely. I think in my personal perspective, I think being given the opportunity, right? I think there's a sense of loyalty also that apprentices feel towards their company. They want to continue on, and they feel like they've been given this incredible opportunity to like really show who they are. So
Drew, did you just tell us that you were an apprentice?
this is true. This is very true. That's great. So Marilyn, let's talk about continuing to talk about the employer side of things. So like the 0 to 1 aspect of starting an apprenticeship from the employer side of things. What work have you been involved in to streamline the process of the employers who are starting from the ground zero with a brand new apprenticeship program?
That's such a great question. Because most employers here in the US are starting from ground zero. It's actually a two-pronged approach. A lot of employers can work with an intermediary like BuildWithin. What does that mean? It means as an intermediary, we have worked with the Federal Department of Labor. They have sanctioned us, and we're almost like a mini Department of Labor. So employers working with us are automatically registered. That's the first piece. You don't have to work with an intermediary or work underneath an intermediary's program, and any employer can register. And BuildWithin is able to support that work with an employer, or again, they work with us and have an immediate program established. The second piece is really about finding the right fit with your apprentices. BuildWithin does support that need with employers, and we can help with matching and finding correct candidates. All of this work, by the way, is covered by our grant with the federal government, so none of this is a cost to the employer. So it's very, very simple from that perspective to begin. And then on a monthly basis, there is reporting that's required, right? Because at the end of an apprenticeship, especially if you're working with us as an intermediary, the Department of Labor is issuing that apprentice a national certificate. And so there is reporting that's required on a monthly basis. And if you're working with intermediaries like us, we're able to provide all those reports. And so it's seamless for the employer. It's very, very simple to do that. And if you're not working with an intermediary like us, we would help develop reports so that it could be done at the employer site on their own.
That's great.
Did that answer?
Yes, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. And I think it's important to go into the specifics of LA and California as well while we're seated here. And we're actually, for the folks that are listening in, we're live in downtown LA at this amazing building and this incredible view. And so I wanted to get into some specifics surrounding California and California's mission to serve 500,000 apprentices by 2029. I feel like that's a huge goal and an amazing goal to have.
Yeah, it's a great goal. In 2018, the governor announced the importance of having apprenticeships here, and that's when that goal was set. And there are a number of different initiatives out here. There are many groups, but in particular in Southern California, there's the Southern California Apprenticeship Network as an example. It's an ecosystem. So there are intermediaries like BuildWithin. There are some nonprofits that are providing pre-apprenticeships for folks. There's a number of different job centers that are involved. Everybody who's interested in helping escalate underserved or underprivileged, everybody who's involved in helping communities advance, again, that's what that particular network is all about. There's NCAN in Northern California as well. So that's one avenue. There are dollars that have flown through the system as well in that respect. I know, as an example, there are a number of incentives, but right now LA County is offering some interesting incentives, which there's a wage recovery at 90% of wage for up to 90 days. So it's a significant benefit back to employers who are just interested in starting a program. So not only do they get high retention, but they're able to get, thousands of dollars back per apprentice. So California is a great place, but it's not just limited to here. BuildWithin is a national company. We're headquartered, as you know, in Washington, D.C. And the program that I just talked about, the several programs, we can find that in almost any city in every state in this country.
That's great. That's a great point. So Marilyn, at this point, you've seen a number of apprentices knock on your door and come through you and come through California, as well as employers. So I'd love to hear, as we're looking back on 2023 and launching into 2024 here, some success stories that come to mind. Could be one or two, but anything that comes off the bat.
There's one story that kind of sticks with me, and we were working with a company in electrification, and it took a number of conversations, right, to get them to understand what an apprenticeship would really be. What does it look like? How's it going to fit inside their company? And we worked in a number of different departments. We worked with sales, we worked with the CTO, we worked with the head of HR. So there were a lot of conversations, and they finally said, yeah, this makes a lot of sense for us. We're a growing company. We have tons of needs. Not only do we have needs from an office perspective, but we have needs in the field for customer success folks. And so an apprentice was brought in, and we were working with the manager to do some training, and you could feel that there was this reluctance, like the manager wasn't quite sure, what did I get into? How hard is this going to be? And it took about 15 minutes to do what we would call an onboarding and just to do the description. And at that, right, like midway through that session, the manager just lit up and said, are you kidding me? The person is going to get a national credential. They're going to get what kind of training? They're going to get 144 hours of additional training. That's provided. My company doesn't have to support that. And I'm looking at how easy it is to record. And that manager said, can I do this for all of my people? And that was the aha moment.
That's great.
So it was a great success. And that apprentice is in the program, and it's working out fabulously. So
that's great. Marilyn, I think we're going to have to end with that story. That was fantastic. But to our audience who's listening in or watching, thank you for joining us on another episode of the BW View. Marilyn, thanks so much for taking some time out of your day.
Thanks, Drew.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.